Good afternoon. Thank you, President Rosenberry, trustees, faculty, staff, alumni, and of course, Barnard students. I'm going to pause a moment because shortly before coming to campus today, I received the brief notification from President Rosenberry's office so that I would be aware of the sad news that we all just learned from her remarks. A Columbia General Studies student passed away this weekend. I didn't know anything else at the time, but it was more than enough to break my heart. As a member of the university community, as a parent of two recent college graduates myself, my daughter, a Columbia College alum. So I stand here and I begin just by offering my condolences to the family and to the community for this tragic loss. I stand here before you today as a Barnard alumna, class of '83, sister of a Barnard alumna, class of '73, two sisters, two native New Yorkers, two native Bronxites, to be precise. Born to Afro-Cuban immigrants who did not have the opportunity to even graduate high school in their home country, let alone attend college. Barnard College, opportunity of a lifetime. A launching pad that changed our family in one single generation. My sister, Chris, if what I'm about to say to her is in English, Cristi, si le voy a hablar en español, went on to get her master's degree in zoology because she loved her animal behavior class at Barnard College just that much. A few years later, she went on to attend law school because my mother and Barnard told her that she could do anything she wanted to. A decade after my sister attended, my years at Barnard were different for family reasons. Our mom had developed severe depression and then severe psychosis during my senior year of high school when my parents divorced. Understanding my new family situation, an estranged father and a very ill mother, Barnard gave me generous financial aid, a package of grants and work study that in combination with what my mother was able to contribute, allowed me to graduate this esteemed institution without debt. Barnard is a place where you can, and you will be, boldly you. And Barnard is a place where you can, and you will find a nourishing and nurturing community. A community where my friend welcomed a bunch of us commuters to her tiny dorm room for 2 weeks during the 1980 subway strike. A community of professors who celebrated my successes and who guided me during my struggles. A community of friends who empathetically understood my crisis of confidence when I faced organic chemistry. But they studied with me and they convinced me that I could get through it. A community of friends who held the knowledge tenderly of my mother's severe mental illness without any stigma or judgment, long before there was any popular movement or progressive discourse about destigmatizing mental illness. Why do I begin here with my personal story? I begin here because whether you're entering your first year, your last year, or somewhere in between, I invite you to reflect on your own origin story as you soak up this entire convocation ceremony. Who are you? How will you grow? Who will comprise your communities? I know a few facts about the incoming class. There are more than 700 of you. As you heard from the president, because I read the website, that you hail from more than 35 countries. You represent 43 states, plus the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico. Like my sister and I, 15% of you identify as first-generation college students. And some of you, as you heard the a cappella group, are already accomplished artists, athletes, and activists. And this is just scratching the surface of this incredible and wondrous class. To borrow a phrase from a contemporaneous movie, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I was a student at Barnard College. In preparation for today, I pulled my yearbook and reread former President Futter's note to my graduating class. I was particularly struck by a paragraph that began with, quote, "Your personal and professional decisions will be made in a volatile situation." Although unrest abounds both at home and abroad, she noted, later in her message, she urged us to recognize that as with challenges faced by prior generations to ours, quote, "the solutions to these challenges will require serious contemplation, deep understanding, and relentless effort." She expressed confidence that the values and standards which characterize the Barnard community had prepared us well and would continue to assist us for making these decisions. As I was thinking about the extraordinary privilege of sharing this Convocation Day here with you today, I asked myself, was she right? The answer came as a resounding, thunderously powerful in its simplicity. Yes. It was 1983, and I was excited and oh, so very petrified that I would shortly be starting medical school. At the time she wrote that note to my graduating class, I had not considered I'd be among the first medical school cohort to be trained at a time when we were all just learning about a syndrome that would eventually be identified as AIDS. At the time she wrote that note, I could not have imagined that just 4 years later, I would move to San Francisco and become an HIV/AIDS primary care clinician. Caring for my patients during the height of the epidemic, I learned so much about the art of medicine, in part because frankly at that time we had so little science to offer. Caring for my patients, I saw up close and personal how homophobia, racism, and misogyny were codified into public policy in ways that were intended to isolate, shame, and in many instances criminalize individuals around the experiences of substance use disorders and around the most intimate of human decisions. Personal and intimate decisions about who to love, about with whom to have sex, about the type of sex that gave one pleasure, and about whether or not to have children and become a parent. At the time she wrote that note, I could not have imagined that after becoming a practicing internist, and while seeing patients twice a week, and while pregnant with my first of my 2 great kids, I would go back to school to get a master's in public health. At the time she wrote that note, I could not have imagined that this little girl from the Bronx would ever be the health department director in Harris County, Texas, let alone serve during the time when Harris County became the first jurisdiction in the nation to have BioWatch sensors alert positive. therefore plunging me into an incident of national significance response, multi-governmental, multi-jurisdiction, all the way up to the White House, to determine if this signaled a bioterrorism event. Thankfully, it was not that. At the time she wrote that note, I could not have imagined being assigned to the role of medical branch director for the Astrodome mega shelter that we stood up on the fly to house 27,000 of our neighbors who fled from New Orleans in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. At the time she wrote that note, I could not have imagined being appointed Deputy Mayor of Health and Human Services in my hometown, or a trustee to a friendly Barnard neighbor, the City University of New York. At the time she wrote that note, I could not have imagined that I would be leading the Guttmacher Institute, as you heard, a think tank that focuses on sexual and reproductive health and rights, as we all watched the Supreme Court decimate the federal protection for abortion. A decision in which Justice Thomas warned in his concurring opinion that he was coming for many more of our rights. He wrote, quote, "In future cases, we should all reconsider this court's substantive due process precedents," unquote. Once again, full circle. I am doing work that reminds me every day how homophobia, racism, and misogyny are still and once again being codified into public policy in ways intended to isolate, shame, and in many instances criminalize individuals around the most intimate of human experiences and decisions. And I have no doubt that at the time President Futter wrote that note to my graduating class, she never foresaw Barnard students attending class on the heels of a global coronavirus pandemic in a world where quote unquote 100-year wildfires, earthquakes, and hurricanes occur with stunning frequency. She did not foresee a United States where a long overdue racial reckoning is underway but still fights uphill and faces fierce backlash, and where reproductive health rights and justice are under aggressive assault across large swaths of our country. So I borrow liberally from her advice and paraphrase this way. You, Barnard students, have already and will be called upon again to make personal and professional decisions in volatile situations. Geopolitical unrest and environmental upheaval abound. The solutions to these challenges require serious contemplation, deep understanding, relentless effort, and bold action. I share her prediction that the values and standards which characterize the Barnard community will prepare and assist you for making these decisions. But I take the liberty of adding additional advice as I reflect back on my past to look forward towards your futures. The personal and professional decisions you make will be yours, but you needn't make them in isolation. Indeed, you should not make them in isolation, especially not in volatile situations or when unrest abounds. Students, look both ways, then look behind you and in front of you. Look both ways to see who is extending their arms to catch you when you stumble, for stumble you will. Look behind you to see who has set their shoulders strong and firm for you to stand on, because they did not struggle, strive, and survive, and thrive in vain. Look ahead of you to see who's lighting a path you didn't even know was there. And always, always, always look within, because your joy, your strength, your boldness abound. Thank you.